Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to be going over how payroll managers can help secure their company. Myself and Mohammed will be introducing ourselves in a moment, but just from some housekeeping items. If you have any questions for us during the webinar, please put those into the chat. If we can, if we're able to answer them as we go along, we'll just answer them as we go along. Otherwise, we will have a question and answer section at the end of the webinar here. So just let us know if you have any questions. We're going to be trying to focus very heavily on items that you can do as a payroll manager or as somebody in a financial role. Less on some of the stuff around like what eBacon does on our security side. If you have any questions about that, feel free to put it in the chat. We might address it depending on time, or Mohammed or I will reach out. So with that, let's get started here. So let me talk a little bit about myself. My name is Alex Kramer. I'm the VP of Product Engineering. My role takes me all over the place inside of eBacon. I do a lot of stuff related to product development, the software you see, but then also working with Mo on the security side and the IT side at eBacon. Mo?
My name is Mohammed Ganoum. I'm the cybersecurity manager at eBacon, and I go as Mo. As Alex, touches a lot of landscapes in eBacon, I do a lot of this also, but in terms of security, handles a lot of application security, email security, and a lot of different, policies, compliances in our own company. So I'm pretty much diverse when it comes to like financial security or management security or risks or even to the technical parts.
Yep. And we both work in a sector that's super interesting on the payroll side. Anyone who's involved in payroll knows there's a lot of threats that can happen. So we've both seen kind of like what happens on the financial side, the software side, but also just kind of individually at how to secure a business that's trying to touch money or handle money. So these are all areas that hopefully we can impart some wisdom upon you. And if you have any questions for us, again, feel free to ask them as they might be helpful for you or other people on that side. So Mo, tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today.
So today we'll be talking about like what are the ongoing threats for payroll managers, and this touches a couple of topics like employee identity thefts, payroll money theft, ghost employees, impersonation, physical identity theft or check theft. And mainly these topics are what we've been seeing along the years with some of our clients and with a lot of different people in our own industry, and that's why I thought we should give you some of that knowledge back to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Mo. So as we get started here, we wanted to give you kind of an insight. Like as people in the security side of the business, we've definitely seen, people attempt to do things to us or attempt to do things to a lot of different customers. We've also, Mo and I, go to a lot of like seminars. We listen to a lot of discussions around hacking. And the one thing that a lot of times people have a misconception on is what it feels like to be hacked. Uh, and what I mean by that is like if you really look at what happens in an attack, sometimes you're getting that kind of traditional Hollywood look where you've got this like pirate's skull munching on your screen telling you that you're going to have like your entire life savings wiped out. Those are called ransomware attacks typically. Those do happen, and you do have to make sure you're protecting yourself against that. But when we look at the financial side of things, it's more typical for an attacker on the financial side to attempt to do things that are more like a hops between things in your system. So you won't see them necessarily like you won't necessarily see them just like attack one part of your system. You'll see them attack multiple different layers of your system. And you as a payroll manager or in the financial role are part of the layers of the security in your system. So you might not necessarily be the primary target for an attack or an attacker or a hacker or whatever. You might just be one hop along the pathway that they would use to get somewhere else. And understanding that an attacker is not playing a game of football. They're not playing a game of fronts. They're playing a game of more like a soccer game where there are things are going back and forth. They're probing, trying to find out what's going to happen if they go one direction. It might take them a long time to score a goal. It could be very boring to watch on TV if you don't like soccer. But they're doing more of that than this like break in, break in instantly, steal something, that kind of thing. Like that financial fraud sometimes takes a little bit longer to build itself up, or it could look something different than what you would expect. And that's one reason why, like, I want to give everyone a heads up as we talk about these things, is that you want to make sure that if something feels weird, not like, oh, is my computer running slow? Is my internet going slow? Could that be a sign of an attacker? Maybe, probably not in the financial side of things. They don't want to make it that obvious. But you should have the understanding that if like you get a weird call or a phone number happens to ring to you that you're not used to, that talks about the business or something, that you're aware of those threats, because those are the ones where, like, as a part of your defense system, you are possibly more likely to be hit or attacked. On that side, you are possible also to be attacked by your email and by other methods, but you're part of the line of potentially getting money from your company, which is what an attacker ultimately wants. Do you have any thoughts to add on to that, Mo, on that side?
Well, just want to piggyback on what you mentioned about like how it feels to get hacked. Throughout my experience, and especially in the financial industry, and other different sectors, and for small businesses, they don't make it like Hollywood or what happened in Las Vegas or whatever. They're more like slow, and there might take like a couple of years to do that, because you want to think of it like they're siphoning money from your system, right? Cents, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, it doesn't matter. But like they don't want to trigger anything weird in whatever financial system that you have. That being like security financial systems or your auditings or the logs or whatever. So if you it's I want to also add another analogy. Let's say you're eating blueberries, right? And you're eating blueberries. Okay, this tastes like blueberry, and like one of them, just doesn't taste right. But you will know exactly what that tastes like. So it wouldn't taste like blueberry. It wouldn't taste right. Like you say, oh, what did I eat? It might be like an old blueberry, or one of those weird blueberries. So that's what you want to keep an eye at. If something doesn't feel right, and as Alex said, it's not necessarily in like terms of slow systems or slow internet, but like if something seemed like 1% or like even 10% weird, you might want to look and dig into that. And that's where things start to more be revealed what that is.
Awesome. I'm interested in your blueberry analogy since you're allergic to blueberries. So that's weird, but whatever. Maybe you are a hacker and we don't know who you are. Um, but to kind of jump into the first threat that we're going to talk about today, Mo, why don't you give us a little bit of background on identity theft and what the threat
Yeah.
looks like?
So identity theft, it's for people stealing identities, in terms of like social security number, employee IDs, even employee credentials, through addresses or other details. And usually attackers, what they do is they try to figure a way on putting it together and to make sense for the financial guys. And that can come in terms of like, okay, as we know, Experian or other, T-Mobile or other big companies always get hacked. So these kind of summon information are being released on the dark web, and they're being sold by bulk. So they do have social security, they do have addresses, they do have all of those. But the missing part between all of those is that they cannot put one to one together, because they don't know who you are, they don't know anything. But when it comes like when they figure that out, that what identity theft looks like. And how would it feel like? It would feel like somebody trying to access your Facebook or your bank account, or even your eBacon logins, using those credentials to log in and stealing your identity. And it can go beyond through these kind of methods. And how they do it either by phishing emails. You see, and what phishing email is, you get those weird emails. Send us your social security number. I'm from whatever company, or I'm from the IRS. What's your social, whatever. It might come something like that, or it can come like as an SMS phishing, right? So phishing is trying to get something out of somebody else maliciously, without that being from the right person or right company. They might send you a text, say like, oh, this is the FBI, please send us your social because we need to double check something. So any kind of forms of this falls under phishing, and this will lead eventually to identity theft.
Yep. And would you say, Mo, that today identity theft and, or well, actually not identity, but like phishing is probably one of the most effective methods of stealing identities or stealing credentials?
Yeah, phishing is being proven, especially with AI and in new emerging technologies, that it's being really effective because they're able to clone websites so easily using AI. Like go to ChatGPT, hey, this is a website. I just want to make a similar login, and they just tweak it, and that's it. So it becomes really easy to create those kind of similar or cloned websites, like for Chase, Bank of America, you name it, and even our own website. So just keep an eye out about all of these things, and Alex will show you exactly how to protect yourself against identity theft.
Yep. And to piggyback on what you're mentioning there, the number of phishing incidents per day and the number of phishing websites per day number in the tens of thousands that are just reported in one day to some agencies and to some groups that handle phishing websites. And so being aware of phishing and understanding what that looks like to your business and how it can be used against you is extremely important. But not just on websites, like Mo mentioned SMS, which is texting. One, you might have noticed this. I know I've gotten it. My wife got it in the same day, which was, hey, you got a toll that needs to be paid. Click here for the tolling, right? Well, first off, I live in Arizona. Mo lives in Arizona. We have no toll roads that I know
Yeah.
of in the state of Arizona. So that's a stupid phishing attack. But it's an effective phishing attack because they're running on a large audience. So it could look like a lot of different things. Those are kinds of um, things that could be there. Um, and I have one thing here saying like, have received employees from employees supposedly asking to change their bank information on payroll. That's a great example of a phishing attack. They're trying to impersonate somebody. They typically have an incorrect email address. Something's wrong with that, what I mean, type of thing. And that's a good example too, where the more information that an attacker has about your business, the easier it is for them to use that against you in some way. So those kinds of emails are used as like kind of a reconnaissance to see like what they can try to get or what they can kind of get from you. And the best thing to do is kind of ignore them, report them as spam, and then block those things. The, that's pretty much the extent to what you can unfortunately do in that instance. But being aware of that and having the right process in place is what one thing I'm going to talk about here in a second on the side.
Yeah, and just to build on what Alex mentioned, make sure like you make those information in a way non-public, like the manager of the company for the finance, or accounting manager. As much as you can, make it harder for people to see who they are. As much as you want to have a good PR, but they might be used against you. For example, they might get some kind of finance employee and send a text to them, hey, this is Katie and I'm the financial manager, please send me these papers, I forgot to, and I'm out of I locked out of my computer, or something like that. So
Yep.
make sure to have some kind of a workflow within your company for this kind of stuff.
And we'll touch base on that a little bit later on how people can impersonate each other. It not only happens in the phishing side, but also in instances like that where people kind of fake do that. So let's get into a little bit on identity theft. So we wanted to make sure that when we're talking about this stuff for you, we're not talking about things that you're going to go to your IT team and do. We want to give you the practical advice that you, in your role today, can do if you're not necessarily technical, or things you can work with your IT staff or other people who might be technical on your team to implement. Some of these are more practical, like when we say keep your computer up to date. Again, most companies or a lot of companies might have an IT staff who's updating their computer. One thing that we see happen is sometimes we just don't restart a computer on time, or we don't, we're told to update something, we don't do it, or we need to update a version of a software that's on our desktop, and we just don't get around to doing that. Those updates are quite critical when you look at a lot of how an attacker starts to go through your network. They will use old and unupdated systems as stepping stones to get additional places. And definitely today, there's a lot of what we call 0 day instances of where like they release something and then like right away we see it exploited and attacked. So keeping your computer updated and any other things on your computer updated is super important. Two is you should really make sure that any private employee information that you have is kept somewhere safe. Your email is not a safe place. Your email is not encrypted. It should not be kept there. If you're getting private information there, you should move it to somewhere that's a safer location. You should work with your IT staff to figure out where you can store that information so you know where it's at and have kind of like logging or eyes on it. But if you are using your email inbox today to kind of store that information, one thing that we've seen a lot out there today is like um, uh, with our customers is like if their Outlook account gets compromised, then their email is instantly compromised. And since a lot of our Outlook accounts and our Google accounts, if you're using Google, are now cloud based, if you don't have one of the highest levels of Microsoft Office's security, what's
Subscriptions.
it called, subscription, you are not necessarily fully protected, even if you have two-factor on Microsoft Office. So you just want to make sure that if an attacker does get into your email, that they're going to get the least amount of information that they possibly can. And so if you can do everything you can not to have information in your inbox that could be looked up, because unfortunately what an attacker can do when they get into Office is actually search and just say like, give me every instance of a social security number. That's something that actually Microsoft makes available to everybody so that we can make sure that that data is not there, but attackers know how to do that kind of thing too. So just make sure that you're not storing that information there. If anything, if you need it to be sent back and forth, it needs to be very temporary, removed, and then stored in a location that's not that spot. Um, Same thing, your company should have security systems set up, antivirus, defender, and updated and active. Again, that's just a question I asked your IT staff of like, hey, are these things on? Like, are they running? And if you hear like, well, we don't really have any antivirus, or no, we don't have anything, that might be an opportunity to ask like an additional like why on that side. Um, you want to you Going back to the encryption thing, like using an encrypted place to store stuff, like if you have Microsoft, even though OneDrive is a public, or not public, is a cloud-based solution, it is still more encrypted than your email at this point. So like there's more steps you can take to actually look at that in your IT staff and use that as a way of kind of seeing what's out there and what needs to be protected in a different way. Your email doesn't have that same level of protection. And Mo, maybe you can in a second go a little bit about that one. Um, Generally, you don't want to give information out over to email or phone if you cannot validate the identity of the person. And we'll talk about this a little later on that like it's very hard to validate people. Like it's getting very very easy to like spoof somebody. Even you might get a text message from somebody or an email from somebody thinking it's the employee and they want some information from you. uh, you know that's the time to do the due diligence to make sure that that's the right person on that side. And we're going to talk about this a little later on, but you should have a plan when employee information is compromised, who to notify, and who in your organization handles that, and what to do next. Again, I'm going to talk about that at the very end about some of the steps you should have, but that's a very important piece of this because even if you do everything right, it could be just one misclick or one mistype when you're busy that could give the wrong information away to somebody that you want to make sure you're planning for what happens after that right now. So, Mo, anything that you want to add to those suggestions?
I just want to add, make sure whatever data you have for your employees are secure. And the reason why it puts you as a business in a liability position. You don't want to be in a liability position. You might need to pay a fine to the federal government and even to your state. So you want to make sure that these information are secure and you're doing your due diligence accordingly. Because when it comes to that, any kind of employer or employee that you have or contractor or even your clients, right? They might actually sue you for that. So you are liable for these kind of information. So that's
Yep.
why you need to take these steps.
It's very important to remember that, and that your what was I going to say on top of that? Very important to remember that, and remember like the kind of responsibility you have on that on the state side too. If you are doing business in some states, being somewhat familiar with like the different laws around privacy, especially between employees and customer or employees and employers, and the relationship between that. Like especially if you're in California, the privacy regulations are much stricter than in other states, but every state is currently changing rules until we have a federal policy on this. We're going to probably still see every single state have different privacy and requirements on that side. What I've seen, just my own side as I've researched those, is that they typically have a weirder relationship when you get to our level. Like when you talk about like employee versus employee relationships, a lot of times when they're writing these privacy laws, they're saying, we want to do everything we can to protect our information against Meta or Google, but they don't really say like, well, what happens with this small company over here who's got information, right? So sometimes it's a little bit murkier when you start getting into some of the privacy stuff. But it is beneficial to just understand what those are and just kind of high level, like what do I have to know about? And I would say like if you are in California, it's the more complex one that I don't have the expertise to kind of give the individual details. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, on that side of the business, so I can't give you that detail. Just more of the just double check it, look it up, and make sure you're familiar with it. So moving over to the next threat, Mo, payroll money theft. What are we talking about?
So, payroll money theft is when attackers are going into your account as an admin or as a contractor or as an employee, and what they're doing is they're changing deposit or their direct deposit of an employee or for the whole people, or even adding a new account over there and attempting to do that to steal their money. Mainly, we see that with a lot of hacked accounts. Somebody's credentials get stolen, they go in as hackers, and what they do is they change the bank account number. That's the first thing they do, right? They go in, they change the bank account numbers to whatever weird bank account numbers that they have, and they try to siphon the money there. Luckily, in our systems, we know this is a harmful, like, or this is a high risk kind of stuff, so we directly are able to tackle that. But also you need to have some kind of idea, okay, if this happens on my end, like as a company, right, what should I do to have an to see if this really is the employee or not that did that, or the change that happened or something like that. And not only through eBacon system, through your own systems. How does that look like? If you're using other kind of vendors, how does that look like? How to make it more secure, how to make more better validation of that. So Alex will go through exactly what needs to be done to show that. This has been a case since the first of the www World Wide Web, and now it's continuing to be the case right now. So just you need to keep your eye peeled for this kind of stuff.
Thank you, Mo. Yeah. When we talk about payroll money theft and we talk about the risk of that, one thing on our side is that we do have systems in place to try to like double validate somebody. We have seen definite instances where employees put their credentials places, give their information up, and that's an avenue for people to try to change a direct deposit. Thankfully or unthankfully, the direct deposit, when people try to use that, they're typically going through certain accounts of certain banks that are easy to kind of identify, and then we have different systems in place to catch that. But let's go back to your side. So one thing is that in all instances, like the employees should be logging in and like having their cell phone information in our system and doing the change online, because that gives us an additional validation step to actually make sure like, okay, I can somewhat validate their cell phone. It is not foolproof, but it's much harder to kind of get in the middle of the cell phone stuff, which we'll talk about later on. Um, if you're not putting cell phones in the system, or if you're not letting them use their cell phone or not syncing their cell phone, then that's something that where they're going to have to come to you to do that. In those specific instances, you should have some way of validating that employee through a phone call or through just a conversation. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have everyone in the office, or you can see everybody once a week, or you can do that, that's great. You can go up to them and be like, hey, I just want to double check you want to actually change your direct deposit. If that's not feasible and you have to call them or ask the manager or whatever, if you're calling them directly, you're probably okay, but you should still ask like a little bit of a detail to validate that that person is the real person. And this might be a level of paranoia, but we have seen instances where an attacker can get access to somebody's cell phone. It is a real threat, where they could forward the number, or they could forward the SMS to like their personal one, or to another device. So it's not it's not impossible for them to do that. It just, like, a lot of times in these instances of this kind of direction of threat, uh, they're trying to go for a little bit more quantity, and it takes more time to do that to one employee. So you have some ability to kind of say like, well, let me just call them and just double check with them, like, what's your, some, if you know something specific about that person, asking them that just to validate it, just to get you some kind of confidence that they're the right person is helpful. Um, when you're talking about your own company's systems, you probably have access to your company's bank accounts, or you have access to your company's, other accounts. You should have multi-factor authentication turned on in those areas, um, to prevent somebody from just getting a login to, let's say, your Wells Fargo account and doing whatever they want to do. If you can somehow have like a dual authentication where somebody else has to validate, like, let's say that the company's sending a wire out through their bank account, is it today that someone can just go on there without actually like having another person say yes to that? Those are areas where you might want to double check, to see what your banking security allows, because that is another area where people could try to get people to move money around without their knowledge. And then one thing I'd say is like, uh, like, going back to the smell test on things, like, don't wire or send money through unusual means. So like, if an employee is like asking you like, oh my gosh, I need my payroll money right now, like, can you just wire this to me? Like, like that, I think everybody would probably go like, that's pretty unusual. Like, I'll either pay you through like the ACH thing, like eBacon has a way to do that through our payroll system. Or we'll go through like a check or something else that's not necessarily like I got to get it to you instantaneously. And if you do need to, again, if you have a system to validate that person, then use the systems in place to validate the person. But we've seen that sometimes that urgency factor on somebody saying, I need the money like right now, or, I need the money in some unusual means, is usually, again, that kind of weird factor that should make you just go like, oh, let me just double check this. Let me make sure that this isn't, uh, that, if Joe's saying this, that this is actually Joe. And one of the things that we do see is that, there's like some companies that have a lot of admins in our system. Um, you should really be doing everything you can to reduce the number of like global admins on our platform. So if you've got, like, having a couple is fine, but like if you have like every manager as an admin and you have 5 or 6 people as admins, there's ways you can work with your customer service rep to narrow down what they're allowed to see. So for example, we can create sub account, like sub admins, or like, admin two, or like profiles that allow them to like do the stuff that admin do, but you can take away the ability for them to look at direct deposits, or you can take a look away for them to look at checks, right? Or you can turn off the reports for them. So sometimes I think it's easy to just like, label someone as an admin, where it's easier to, or it's more secure to reduce that access to the bare minimum that needs to be there to be able to do everything in the system. Just because that admin privilege does have the privileges of being an administrator, even though we have everything logged, you know, reducing your service area for a threat is important. Anything to add on that one, Mo?
Yeah, just I know I know Alex mentioned a lot of stuff right now, but I would love to summarize some of those. So one of the things are, make sure you have not only one system, systems with an S. It's like an onion. Every time, it's getting peeled, there's another system, so you want to have systems, right, to verify what's going on. Second thing is, make sure you have MFA on your systems, or whatever you're using. Is it the email? Is it some kind of third party vendor? Whatever. Try to use MFA on those. What MFA is, when you put your password is down, that's one way of authenticating. The second way, or multi-factor authentication, is you get like, okay, allow this login, or I'm gonna send you a code, or whatever something looks like that. That's what a multi-factor authentication looks like. Make sure you have those. Third thing is make sure whatever data you're seeing, I'm sorry, make sure whatever admins you have there, these are real admins, or these are the admins that they're actually using the administration panel, in eBacon systems or in other systems, right? Make sure these are capable, trustworthy, competent, and even positive communication feedback with them. It's very important to establish this kind of trust, right? And turn on MFA for those admins. On our systems, we turn them on. It's a thing on our system. But like if you're using other systems and you have admins, please do turn them on or enforce them. Well, I think this is it, Alex, for like for the payroll money theft topic.
Let's jump into ghost employees real fast. I know this is a very intimidating background. I have to say thank you to our marketing team for making these awesome backgrounds with ghosts and stuff. But Mo,
But
what is a ghost employee? Not a
I
Lord of
want
the Rings character.
I want to point out that this looks like from one of those kings from Lord of the Rings, like that, right? The weird looking horses and like fighting for Sauron. Or the dark one. But ghost employees, what are they? So ghost employees are not real employees or fake employees or employees that have been getting identity theft and been added twice. So what that means, for your company, it means like somebody stole somebody's identity. They said they're working for you. You validate that they're working for you through like social security and everything like that. It went in, but they're not working for you. So it's more like double dipping at that point. Or there's some kind of hacker who put a fake employee getting money based on that, and you know, they're not doing any work for you. And that's what it looks like. On your books, you're losing money for this employee, but they're not giving any kind of value for the company because technically they're not real, they're not doing any work, right? So you want to make sure these employees are not in your company, and Alex will go through kind of systems on how to validate that you don't have any of those and how to prevent them in the future. um, this is really important because we see a lot of those in big companies who like have thousands of employees, and like finance team, HR team, everybody have their own thing, and like they forget a couple of things and they forget to validate, people coming in, people going out. So they miss a couple of employees or something like that. So it's very important to keep an eye out for those. Although this is a low risk, because in finance you'll see like, okay, with the balance sheet or everything going on, you'll be able to figure that out.
Yep, and to piggyback on that side, like the from a lot of the security elements, like we don't see this as commonly as you believe. We have things that we have there for your team if you need to. And ghost employees can also mean employees who pretend to be another employee in order to clock in for the day, right? One thing that you'll see, when we're going to get into this on the impersonation side too, is that one trend in recruiting, especially if you're recruiting remote employees, is that the person you're talking to doesn't end up being the person you hire, right? So you might be like, oh, this person's awesome. I really like this person. But then who shows up on the job is not the same person that was on the phone call. And again, this isn't happening as much as you think today, especially not if you're not in tech. It's not going to be as prevalent because if you're hiring like construction employees on the job site or someone who has to show up and physically do something, it's unlikely that you're going to get through that. But if you're hiring remote employees, there is a potential ghost threat on that side, or are you hiring somebody who's not supposed to be there? I think it was this CISA, which is the Agency for Security, and then the FBI issued like that there was actual like foreign governments attempting to do this to make money by working at companies, tech companies and stuff. So it happens. And on top of that, the other thing that happens sometimes is if you've got a larger construction crew, you'll see that you've got someone who you hired employee A, and because there's a lot of employees coming and going, employee A actually has friend B, and they both work the job, and they just kind of go depending on that. And I've only seen them happen a couple times. There's ways you can prevent that in our system and just like with processes. but it's amazing that people can try to get away with that of just like saying like, well, I'm Alex, and the who showed up yesterday was Alex too. But because we've got 300 employees and we jump between job sites, the manager doesn't know who's who coming to the job site that day. And again, there's ways you can prevent that, or to have the give the managers tools. One thing is like if you can verify employees with an in-person interaction, that's super helpful. Through the e-verify process, there's a lot of tools there that when you're working on an I-9 or filling an I-9 out or going through e-verify, that you're getting physical documents. There's been a lot of change around I-9 because of COVID and because of remote working that has made it easier for people to defraud those, which is one reason why you see the opportunity for people to even work like in like another country and like pretend they're in America type of thing. So physically interacting with a person's fantastic if it's not possible. Um, like having like another manager validating that that person's the same person that you hired, or that that person is actually at the job site, is super important. Maybe not the person, like what you'll see potentially in like a ghost employee is like, you know, it's like, hey, I just hired my friend and he's going to start working here tomorrow and here's all the details, right? Like you need the processes in place to make sure that if someone does that, you can be like, okay, that's super cool. Let me meet them or something like, or let me talk to them on the call, like on the phone. I need to get some information from them for the onboarding process, right? It's just very easy at times to miss that and also not notice that. Same thing though, like going back to the having admins on the account, it's not impossible for somebody to just add another employee and then just start paying into the system, right? Like that's why you want to really trust the people you put in there and really trust limit the exposure of the admin account, so that you can have somebody just put people into the system and start paying them also, and making sure you're validating that those new employees are new employees and that those new employees are supposed to be there too. One thing that we always say in security is we trust but verify. Like I love Mo. Mo has a super cool mustache. I'm gonna verify when Mo makes a change to the system. Mo, sorry.
Yeah. No,
You're a
you're
cool
good.
guy. But we both need to make sure that we're doing things that are as secure as possible. And that requires everybody to be on their best behavior and everyone to do the things to make sure that we're keeping the company safe and keeping our customers safe. And you should have that same kind of attitude. Like, even if you really trust the person sitting next to you, just double checking the employee. You should have a good enough relationship that you can double check those things if something feels off. If you saw them walk in the door today and they picked up their paperwork from you, you don't need to ask the person that added it to the system, is that person a real person who's walked in the door type of thing. But at least having some kind of system in place. One thing also, and this is a little thing, like having pictures to upload, like, so if your team's like using manager punch in our system, and especially if you've got crews that are going in and out or you have a lot of turnover, having the picture next to the employee in the manager punch thing is just like a little thing that you can do to be like, hey, just make sure that that employee is the same employee, or that make sure that person's the right one. There actually is a widget that we built for one company that you can have enabled, that is called like the photo lookup, and you can actually like use that to look up an employee's name and see what a photo of them looks like. If you're having problems with people on a job site, so that your managers can verify that employee. And again, like this is not as big a risk as like phishing, where phishing is something that like you could open your email up and you might get 2 or 3 a day that you're dealing with on that side, on the phishing side, and protecting yourself. Again, it's something that you should be looking out for. You should be watching for, and much like the onion layers that Mo was mentioning, as long as you're part of the systems that are helping protect the company, you can prevent this kind of fraud from happening, by just having the systems in place that makes it harder. Because sometimes if it's too hard, people just back away. They don't want to put the effort into it. If they know you're watching, they're not gonna. They're less likely to take that angle on the business. But as we've seen in the past, like there's always opportunities for people. Um, so we're gonna move on to the next thing. I'm hoping everyone's not too scared yet, because I was once talking to somebody and talking about how being in the cybersecurity world is a scary business. You feel like there's threats everywhere. There's a lot of good stuff that happens on the internet, but we always have to just remember what's going on. So next thing we're going to jump into is something that's kind of newer, and we've actually been seeing a lot of articles about it coming out, which is impersonation. So, Mo, give us a high level of
Yeah.
this.
So, pretty sure like impersonation been happening, since the old times. Um, but now it's getting worse and worse because of the tech. And we have a lot of people trying to keep up with whatever new technology that we have. AI isn't helping also, so we got a lot of things to uncover over here. So, what is impersonation? It is when you get a call from someone saying they are, um, and they start asking you for a bunch of money, or asking somebody to get a raise, or you find something like that's not what they who it's not who they said they called you. They were using some kind of a voice generator or AI voice generator, or even like some kind of weird details they were able to collect through your social media, and just put two and two together and like figure out, oh, this is what happened. I know this is a little bit feels vague, but I'll give a couple of examples that it might solidify what that looks like. I know we've been seeing a lot of those kind of TikTok, Instagram kind of things of like somebody giving a call to his mom and like, I'm in a trouble, whatever, and blah 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 blah. Send me $3,000. I need it now. Dad wouldn't pick up the phone. She goes in bank, sends him $3,000 through a wire or MoneyGram or OMT or whatever money transfer they're using. They collect the money, and then she calls her son again. I'm like, hello, yeah, how are you doing? I just sent it. Are you doing well? So like, her son would say, what are you talking about? What's going on? Wait, why did you send me money? What's happening? The money is collected, the money is gone. The son is like confused. She explains that I got a call from you. This is what happened, and it's not the son. So this is exactly what it feels like. In context of businesses, somebody will give you a call. Hey, I'll call Alex. Say, hey, Alex, I need a $2,000. I broke my leg. I'm in the hospital. Like, can you just send me that through some kind of means? I'm sorry to do that. You're my manager, but I gotta give somebody a call. That's what it feel like, and that's what it look like. Another form of it would be, I'm calling. I want to do an interview. I'm Mo. I'm this, and that. I give my social. I give everything. I'm already employed, but it turns out to be somebody else in a different country or in the same country using my social security as Mo, but they're routing that kind of money into a different bank account. So that's what it feels like, and that's what it looks like. So there are some ways to verify, and we always go back to the idea of having systems to verify these kind of stuff, right? Also, this is a very low risk right now. It's not happening that much that we want to happen. It's really edging phishing in some kind of way and form, but this is more of a future to look at. It's like a futuristic kind of risk that because of AI, how easy to do it, how weird the tech is becoming. This is what that looks like.
Yep.
Um,
So to kind of
yeah.
piggyback on your side on the AI thing, like one of the areas that AI has gotten really good is that you only need a few seconds of someone's voice in order to replicate that voice now. So it's not impossible for somebody to talk to you in a voice that sounds like somebody that you know, um, on things. And same thing with video, actually. When you look at video stuff, it's actually becoming possible to take a picture of somebody and then make it look like they're talking on this call. But Mo and I are actually real people. But especially in the interview scams, if you look at if you look it up on YouTube, you look like AI interview scams or talking head interview scams, you'll see some of the ways that people do that that you can kind of use. One of the famous tricks that people use is like, show me your hands, like show me your hands, because of course AI sucks at generating fingers, but also because a lot of the technology today that's just generating these kind of heads on a call doesn't account for like your body movement. It's really good at like head movements on that side. The scary element of it though is a lot of the head, like in a way, there's a lot of technology companies that are trying to build things so that they don't have to send as much data through when you're on a video call. So they're potentially going to start making kind of replications of our face and just sending where our face movements are to the other person. So it's going to get kind of potentially harder to know if I'm really talking to the real, representation of you or not. Mo, had one more thought, but I wanted to let you get in there real quick.
Okay. Um, So one of the things I want to mention, what Alex just mentioned, is so easy to replicate your voice, and it's not only your voice, your the way you look like from certain pictures on your Facebook. They can replicate that. There are some kind of really good AI imaging replication. How it used to be in the old days, you just record a voice and you just cut those kind of placements, or like say yes, please do this. They put it together and they replicate, and to regenerate again, it's like cutting a small film and then piecing it back together. Now you only need to say one or two sentences, and you can type in whatever script you want that person to say, or like that generator to say, with whatever voice you want them to say in. This is the weird part. It's getting easier and easier to do this. But again, this is a low risk, but something to look for in the future.
And I'd almost go on top of that, like where we've seen this be used in a business context. There was a very high profile case that, or not case, but like instance, I think it was like late last year, where a team member of a team member from like a CFO or something on that level joined a call with the CEO and somebody else on like a Teams call or a Zoom call, and they were said move, $3 million from here to here. Turned out that two people on that call weren't the people. They were just like generated computer things, just telling this person to do something, right? That's why when we get into how to protect ourselves, I'll talk about a couple steps here. So one thing is like never move money without a verification process. Again, if it feels weird, then it is. In that instance of the person who moved the money, they said very specifically like that person's face didn't look right, but I still moved the money because I was on a Teams call with them and I was supposed to move the money. Having the systems in place in the business on money movement is key and critical. Knowing knowing the process for moving money, or having a process for moving money between accounts or between people, or reasoning should be something that you have somewhat written down and understood. Um, and doing things in kind of like a two-step verification process so someone else can double check that is very important on that side. The second thing is that for you and a key stakeholder or accounting personnel who could transfer money, require money to be moved, have a secret passcode that the two of you share, and you should never write that down. And again, while that's a little paranoid, if I don't know who you are and I have a code that only you and I have talked about, then we're gonna have a little bit more verification on that. Once you've used it, like if you've ever had to use it once, it's possible you should possibly even change that, just to be like, that's a little bit more paranoid, but it would give you more security to say like, okay, now that we've used that, the new passcode is this. Let's agree on the new passcode. Because if somebody gets in the middle of that passcode and knows what it is, they are going to be able to get that. And again, you shouldn't write that down. You should keep that somewhere like in your head that's safe. You should keep it simple enough that it's safe. And just like, that's just that's between you and another person. And you don't need this between you and every employee in the company, but like having it between you and a critical person in the business is super important. Um, you
Alex, can you
should
give an
get
example? I'm sorry.
what's
Can
up?
you give an example of what that passcode might be between two normal conversation?
Yeah, yeah. I like if someone asked me to move money, I would like say like, okay, hey, what's the what's our code? Like it would be in private course. And by the way,
Yeah.
our code, Mo and I's code, is not going to be blueberry mustache. So that's our code. We can't use that ever again, Blue.
Yeah.
On another side of that is that um, if you get a call, like Mo said earlier, like this applies to the business and also personal things. Like people are using these tools to try to extort family members. Unfortunately, all the details of families and all this other stuff is unfortunately shared. Like there's all these different tools out there where you can like, oh, type someone's name in Google and all of a sudden it says like, well, this person lives at this house and this is the children of this person, and that is unfortunately public information. So like, it is possible to say like, oh, I know who my dad is, and then I'm going to call that Alex's dad with a recording that I got from this call or the face of this call to get money from Alex's dad, right? So having those abilities to like have that passcode is critical. But then also like if you feel it's weird, like hang up, right, and call the number you have on your phone. It is possible, going back to the ability for people to take over a phone, it is possible for someone to take a phone over and forward that phone to somebody's thing. But if you call the number that you have on your phone for that person, you have a better chance of potentially like, well, let me just call you back on your phone number you have, right? And someone's like, no, 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 I can't do that. Like that's not, you know what I mean, like probably not going to be the real instance there. And lastly, if you suspect this is happening, reset your passwords, uh, move your change your banking accounts, your and your and definitely like on if it's related to the business change or like eBacon admin accounts. Um, Going back to what we said earlier, like it's possible you can report this kind of stuff and say, oh, okay, this person's impersonating me, this kind of thing. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of recourse today in law enforcement to handle that. So you might not necessarily get any kind of recourse off of that, but definitely reset passwords, lock down your accounts, contact the person that you think is being, copied and let them know. And especially with someone who's important at the business, let other people know. And then get with your IT team to make sure that their information is secure on that side. So there's a couple things. This is so emerging that a lot of the guidance is still like coming up. One thing that I'll say that, like if you're talking to somebody and there's a pause, like if you're like, hey Mo, blah blah blah, and Mo takes 2 to 3 seconds to respond to me every single time I ask him a question, that's an indicator of, that it might not be a fluid conversation between me and Mo. Mo might be fed through a bot that's trying to generate it. They're
Understood.
getting better at doing it faster, but they're still slow to respond. So just be aware of that information.
Because they're
Uh,
typing in the response, and whatever generator needs to say it out loud. So like,
exactly. So we only have about 8 minutes here. I want to just run through two last things. One is based off of this, like again, I want everyone to have like an understanding of like ways that you can secure the business and things that you can do. One thing I'll tell you though is that having a plan, even if the plan is just like one like paragraph or two paragraphs of what you're going to do in these instances for the business, that if something happens or when something happens, you do. So there's, as I've mentioned a couple times, unfortunately, in a lot of the common instances of phishing, there's not a lot of recourse that you have with law enforcement or our government agencies. They have so many instances of these that they're typically not investigating and they're typically not giving anything other than a report. Our local law agencies don't have the necessary resources to stop a lot of that. They might give you like a police report you can use if you have insurance or other elements of that. If you contact other agencies, FBI and CISA, or even like the FTC, who's got some things related to phishing, they typically don't have the resources to help us on that, help us or even you on the phishing stuff. So you just have to make sure you have a plan for like, what do you do next, right? Um, you should have a plan for when your business loses some information. You are part of that plan, so you should have a step in that plan that might be already existing. If you don't have one, just think through it, and think through like what happens next. If you don't know what happens next, that's the opportunity for there to be confusion on that side. The quicker you act from a financial perspective, the better. Unfortunately, banks, much like the government agencies we see, are typically quite slow to respond to potential fraud. Um, if someone's been sent a wire, it's very hard to get that money back. You might get it back, you might not. And even though that attacker has just committed literal wire fraud, which they've got a lot of bad guys for, uh, unless it's a certain amount, it's not. There's no guarantee that anyone's going to go research that for you outside of the bank, right? So the faster you can understand that that happened and the money went to the wrong spot, the faster you can go to your bank. That's why you should have that document. It's like, okay, what's my bank's security phone number? What's my bank's security email, right? What's the process if there's a problem with my bank? Or who do I call? How do I know that? You don't want to be sitting there having accidentally just wired money out or having somebody done something from a scam and be like, I don't even know who to call at my bank to deal with this problem, right? So you want to have that written down. keeping our email support at eBacon.com in case something happens on the employee side. And then just if your company has other resources, your IT team, you know what I mean, like who to call in that instance, those kinds of things. Having that plan in place is super important. The one thing I didn't put on here that's also amazingly important is to um, make sure that if something like this happens, that you sit down and ask why it happened, and then you sit down and ask how could that be prevented in the future. We call those a retrospective in security and development, but understanding the pathway that happened. You might not be able to say this is how they got into my computer, but you might be able to ask the right questions to somebody to say, like, why did that happen, or how did this happen, or where did this go wrong, how can I be better at this. And so long as you can get to that, how do I be better at this, then you're going to help prevent those in the future. And unfortunately, sometimes in a lot of businesses, it takes a lot of steps and a lot of bad things to happen for us to get to the point of like having the right stuff in place that makes it preventive from happening again. Just because of inertia and just like people just don't want to put time and effort into it. So just go again, have a plan, think through it, think through the worst that can happen, think through the little that can happen from your role in the business. Yes, it should be IT's responsibility. Yes, it should be blah blah blah's responsibility, but it's all of our responsibilities to keep ourselves safe, especially in the digital environment. So Mo, yeah, so you raised your hand at me there.
Yeah. So I got a couple of things also to add on what Alex just mentioned. One of them is security is everybody's responsibility. It's not only as a security manager, I'm the responsible for everything. It's the employees. It's for the IT. It's technically everybody's due diligence to make us secure. If an admin has a bad password, that is a compromise. And the weakest link in any kind of company are human beings, right? Passwords, extortion, any kind of these means are, as you can see them, it's the weakest link are humans, right? It's not the technology, it's not the systems, it's not our laptops, it's the human behavior. So security is everybody's responsibility. And I want to piggyback on what Alex mentioned that, when you have a plan, it is very important to know that you need to do what you can control. A lot of the agencies, and if you see like a website similar to yours, Google will not get it down up until like 40 days. Hosting companies also would do the same. They take their sweet time to get this, whatever fake website down, or whatever, fake thing down. So you want to make sure that you control what you can control as fast as you can. And as Alex mentioned, it's very important to do a retrospective, because you need to learn how to prevent this, in the future. So once you did your lessons learned, perfect. Let's prevent this. Let's move on. And it's always kind of we're slaying monsters over here. You're always leveling up and slaying monsters. So you want to have a more of a growth kind of mentality to deal with, these kind of emerging threats.
Awesome. And since we're really low on time here, I'm just going to jump straight to our question and answer section. So, um, Mo and I can spend a few more minutes here, but if you have a question, please put it in the chat for us. Again, if you have any questions about eBacon or about security in general, we can give you some guidance and some direction. We can't tell you the way to do it in your business, but hopefully this has helped you guys today learn a little bit more about some of those threats that are on the marketplace. If you got questions, we're already at time, and I don't want to keep you if you've got a lot more things to do today. So we'll be here for a few more minutes to answer, but otherwise, thank you so much. And there will be, I believe, email with this recording later, that if you want to reference it or look at it or share it with other people or ask additional questions, feel free on that side. My email is alex@ebacon.com. Mo's is Mohammed@ebacon.com.
One M.
1M, yeah, very important. I always have to look that up. Um, so, all right, thanks everybody. If there's any, we'll stay around for just a few more minutes on questions.
I think Christy has a question.
Oh, I already responded to that earlier on
Oh,
that side.
perfect.
Like, if you are getting, if you are, the question effectively was like, it was more kind of getting, what's it called? Getting emails from employees on like, hey, like change my direct deposit or do this for me or whatever. in general, you should be looking at, like, the very first thing you should do is like look at the email. Most phishing things will come from email that looks kind of like the attacker, um, and it looks like the person is like, it's like it will have like Mohammed, but then the email will be like something at
Jason?
gmail.com. And of course, Mohammed would never email from a Gmail address, right?
Yeah.
So look at the email address first, and there's other instructions on that. There's a question here on, does eBacon have the ability to notify an admin when an employee does make changes to bank information so it can be validated with the employee? Yes, anytime that they change it, not only will the employee get a notification, but I believe you should be getting a notification also just saying, hey, so and so changed their direct deposit information. Even though they've gone through the validation steps, we still give that. Same thing if like someone's trying to change like their demographics information, they'll get that notification saying that that happened on that side. And on
Yeah.
our side too, just on that question, Debbie, our staff also gets notifications on certain banks. So if we see certain banks, we will also reach out to the employee and verify that they changed it. Even if you verify it, we will reach out with the information we have about the employee or reach out to you to verify it with that person. There are unfortunately some banks that are just known for, like, some of the banks, like if you can go to Walmart and grab a bank account, those are the ones that we're going to typically double check, because those are the ones that have a high fraud opportunity, because they don't require a lot of personal information and there's no verification. There's no what we call know your customer process. I mean, there is, but it's very weak. And so we like to kind of double check those things in that process too, to make sure that that employee is actually using that account. So, but great question on that side. It is definitely a big risk and a big factor that you should be watching out for. Mo, well, thank you.
Yep.
I don't have any other questions right now. We'll wait a minute here, but otherwise, thanks everybody for your time today, and have a
Thank
good
you,
rest of your
everyone.
day.
Stay safe.
Oh, yes.
I think we gotta. Oh, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Feel free to
Cool.
email us if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
See you, everyone.